Thanks, Senator Smith. Senator Britt from Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate all of you being here with us today. I will be the first one to say that I think we can all agree that any practices of deceptive price gouging or intentionally misleading of consumers or elsewhere are completely and totally unacceptable. But we already have laws in place to prevent and enforce against that. What we're here to discuss today is a separate matter. The fact is that businesses, just like families in Alabama and in Ohio, Mr. Chairman, all across our country are having to rethink and adjust their spending patterns to adapt to the current economic circumstances. Circumstances that are driven by persistent high inflation that we've experienced over the last 3 years. Those circumstances have wreaked havoc on businesses, especially the local Main Street establishments that make up the economic heartbeat of their communities and our nation. Core material costs have risen since 2021, and overhead costs in things like utilities and, as you just mentioned, rent and interest have also gone up significantly. Plus, packaging costs for products are up 40%, and domestic shipping costs are up over 20% since 2021. Businesses of all sizes are having to make changes in response to those increased costs just to stay afloat and serve their customers. However, rather than focusing on the root of the problem, I am again discouraged by the apparent lack of responsibility taken by the White House for the consequences of their own actions. Instead of changing policies, this administration has chosen to change its messaging. It's engaged in an absurd attempt to blame shift rather than to reverse course or to admit any fault. Across the board, Americans' finances are being decimated from this administration's policies. 78% of Americans reported having to live paycheck to paycheck in 2023, up 6% from the previous year. We've seen Americans' credit card debt surpass $1 trillion, the highest amount in history. We've seen families that have witnessed mortgage rates double, putting American dream of home ownership, which we know is something that so many people strive for, out of reach. Let me just read you a few data points upon the recent March 2024 Consumer Price Index report that came out. Compared to January 2021, the average Alabama household is paying $918 more per month to purchase the same basket of food and services. Spending is up $133 more per month when it comes to actually going to get something to eat. Spending is up $162 more on shelter, and spending is up $249 more a month on transportation. I want to emphasize this. Cumulatively, the average Alabama household has spent $20,297 more due to inflation since January of 2021. The biggest issue impacting consumers today is not that they have less Fritos in the bag. It's that they have less money in their pocket. You mentioned, Mrs. Schrager, in your testimony, you said, quote, "History has shown that misguided diagnosis of a problem and then implementing this misguided policy will actually create more harm for American households." I fully agree with you. During the pandemic, we saw the Federal Reserve purchase trillions of dollars in Treasury securities, to which initially contributed to inflation. But by the pandemic, while it's long over, as you mentioned, monetary policy has become more restrictive. White House officials then routinely mischaracterized the high inflationary environment as transitory, spurring the administration to pass unprecedented levels of spending when the economy simply wasn't ready. Mrs. Schrager, in your testimony, you also refer to a, quote, loose fiscal policy. And with continued spending and government subsidies towards things like clean energy programs and so-called loan forgiveness. Can you please discuss how this type of loose policy only worsens inflation?
Yeah, so it does a couple different ways. First of all, we're just adding to demand. I mean, as you can see as well, we also have a very tight labor market, and a lot of these policies are scoped to be job creating. So we're just adding even more competition to the labor market, which raises wages, which is also going to raise prices. And as I said, it's just putting more money in the economy, more money in people's pockets. But I think also there's more economic research and sort of a burgeoning consensus that just increasing the debt also increases inflation because and people anticipate that, eventually this debt will have to be paid off, higher interest rates, and that also will increase inflation.
Absolutely. We have about 72% of our spending is mandatory spending, and that continues to grow. And the debt at $34.5 trillion is just simply unacceptable. It's not only fiscally irresponsible, in my opinion, it is morally irresponsible. So thank you so much.